This story begins with a gruesome scene where we see someone simulating a conversation between a mother and her son with two dolls. The son asks about his father, but the mother insists that he eats his food. The furious son keeps insisting on his dad until he hits his mother, blaming her for his father's absence. We see that behind all this is a half-naked man sitting on the floor of an apartment, and the door suddenly bursts open, revealing a group of police officers, who discover this individual had killed the people living in that apartment. The man, named Kim Shin, is arrested by the officers. As they arrive at the scene, another detective joins them with a look of complete shock. Kim Shin claims he was waiting for him. This man was not just another detective, but the husband and father of the victims. His colleagues try to calm him down, but seeing the lifeless bodies of his loved ones in front of him, he completely lost control. He attacks and tries to fend off the officers. The officers try to stop him. Despite their efforts, this individual is strong and blinded by rage. Even tasers have no effect. The man was Detective Du-seok. He managed to tackle and subdue all the officials. Finally, their superior, who is also affected by the deaths of the detective's family due to their closeness, says that even the lowest scum has the right to answer for their crimes. However, in his unimaginable state of anger, Du-seok cannot comprehend or accept this fact. After a series of tasers and a gunshot, the detective is slowed down. Gradually, he tries to lay his hands on Kim Shin, but after another gunshot, he finally collapses. Kim Shin unexpectedly calls him father. Du-seok's colleagues handcuff him while he fervently exclaims that he is not his father. After that, Kim Shin is arrested, and the news spreads. He is taken to a department where he must recreate the murder with some dolls. Sadistically, he corrects the position of the dolls, and we are shown how he arrived at the apartment in the first place. He locked the boy in the bathroom and tied up the mother. He asked her what the boy's favorite song was, and Shin told the mother to sing that song. He promised to spare the boy's life if she managed to sing it all the way through. Then we see how he reenacts what he did to the mother with one of the dolls. He cut off each of her fingers, while forcing her to sing her son's favorite song, but she had bled to death before she could finish it. In parallel, Detective Du-seok is seen, swearing that even if he had to sell his soul to the devil, he would return to Kim Shin all the suffering he had caused to his family. After this, we see Kim Shin in court, where he is sentenced to life imprisonment. The true protagonist of this story is introduced, a boy named Jae-hoo. He is somewhat introverted and is present at the sentencing, along with the owner of the orphanage where he resides. The story continues with Jae-hoo being one of Kim Shin's many victims. Jae-hoo's father had been killed by Kim Shin. The peculiarity of Jae-hoo is that when Kim Shin forced him to sing his favorite song, Jae-hoo managed to sing it in its entirety before losing consciousness due to blood loss. And that's how he miraculously survived the tragedy. Jae-hoo draws attention at school because he constantly beats up and seriously injures other children. However, these particular children are always bullies who mistreat and abuse others. Jae-hoo's adoptive father, who is very religious, pleads with him not to engage in such behavior, as violence is never the answer. But Jae-hoo's worldview has become too disturbed due to his trauma. He constantly sees the shadow of his father bleeding out while singing his once favorite song. He has made it his mission to appropriately punish anyone who deserves it. Throughout the years, we witness how Jae-hoo employed different schemes to deliver punishment. Eventually, he sabotages the gas pipes of a group of boys who were planning to invite girls over, drug them, and stream their abuse and nudity. One of the boys goes to light a cigarette, but the gas molecules in the room expand, and the place explodes. An old man nearby laughs and tells Jae-hoo that it was an interesting spectacle. Jae-hoo ignores him, thinking he's just a weird guy, and they both leave the scene. The scene shifts to a peaceful breakfast at the orphanage where Jae-hoo lives, enjoying a tranquil moment with all the children and the orphanage owner, who have become like family to him. However, his joy is interrupted when he hears on the TV news that Kim Shin is currently living like a king in prison, leading one of the gangs that operate there. Jae-hoo's friend, who is practically a brother to him, turns off the TV out of consideration. The orphanage owner asks Jae-hoo if he is okay, to which he easily replies that he is fine, and that he has already forgiven Kim Shin. Later, we see a man who dyes his hair and has a stream where he forces some boys to act as bullies, while he portrays himself as a vigilante who stops and redeems them by becoming an influencer. As a YouTube influencer, he has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. What? Jae-hoo is stalking this guy because, in reality, that fat bastard had brutally beaten a family man in front of his wife and child, leaving him paralyzed. However, since he was a minor at the time, he only had to face 2 years in a correctional facility. One day, Jae-hoo scratches the fat guy's car to distract him and attacks him from behind with a hammer. He then tries to leave him paralyzed, but being weak, Jae-hoo couldn't successfully incapacitate him, providing the fat guy a chance to counterattack, and he manages to smack down Jae-hoo. The very next moment we see the fat guy being choked by an old man who I guess is pretty strong. Foam begins to flow from his mouth like river, but Jae-hoo pushes the old man to break his grip, and gives the fat bastard CPR to prevent his death. But this action was not out of any outburst of mercy. Instead, Jae-hoo wanted the guy to suffer by being paralyzed, and wanted him to die a long and agonizing death. After the thrilling action, at night, the old man and Jae-hoo have a conversation in which the old man tells Jae-hoo that he has been lucky so far with his delusions of justice, and introduces himself as a detective targeting Kim Shin, and a father who has lost his wife and son at the hands of the murderer Kim Shin. We learn that this old man is none other than Detective Du-seok. He tells him that he cannot play the hero being this weak, and that he has to become stronger, and invites Jae-hoo to join his group, also telling him that if he joins them, they can kill Kim Shin, because the group was made up of relatives of Kim Shin's victims, who were thirsty for revenge. Du-seok asks Jae-hoo to become the arrow that kills Kim Shin by entering the prison. Then we see a scene from Jae-hoo's daily life, where he talks with his friend, his brother, and a girl who lives near the orphanage, who is his childhood friend. They invite him to fool around, but he gives them an excuse and tells them that he can't go, which is really because Detective Du-seok was calling him for the training. The training takes place in a bunker in the mountains. After arriving at the bunker, he meets Detective Du-seok, and once inside the shelter, the detective reveals that he will train him to become stronger and attacks him and tells him that Kim Shin is no ordinary assassin, and he was able to kill agents trained in martial arts with his bare hands. Warns him to be prepared for any situation, to which Jae-hoo frees himself from the grip, trying to attack him with a knife that he had hidden in his pocket just in case. This surprises the detective, and he admires that he came prepared, but still a weapon like that would not be enough to kill Kim Shin in jail. We finally see Kim Shin in action. Some guys are threatening him with knives, but he is holding one of their comrades hostage. The guys had tried to sneak into his room and kill him while he was asleep, but were hopelessly caught. So to punish them, the crazy Kim Shin plans to rip the guy's ear, and says that he will break one of each of his limbs. But suddenly, the leader of the guys appears and hits Kim Shin right in the face with a massive straight punch, which seemed quite painful. In the bunker, Du-seok attacks and holds his knife, which he snatched from Jae-hoo, telling him that he should never rely on weapons, especially if his opponent is stronger than him. In light of this, Jae-hoo asks him about the combat strength of Kim Shin. To that, the former detective describes his murder methods as we see Kim Shin subdue and humiliate the big thug in prison with great ease, and then bust the rest of the thugs that attack, defeating them all in a matter of seconds. An unruly looking guy sitting with a dog who Kim Shin seems to be following orders from congratulates him. Then a scar-faced subordinate of that same guy arrives to clean up the mess made by Kim Shin. He complains to his boss about the consequences for using crazy Kim Shin as protection and not him, but his boss tells him not to be jealous, to which Kim Shin mocks, provoking his anger, which leads him to grab him by the shirt. The unruly guy calms the waters and gives Kim Shin an envelope with photographs of Detective Du-seok. In the next scene, we see Jae-hoo waking up after being knocked unconscious in training, in the room of the deceased son of Detective Du-seok, which seemed to be intact. But he is surprised to see that the rest of the house was a total pigsty. On the floor was a letter lying, which was written by none other than Kim Shin. Reading it, it is revealed that Kim Shin refers to the detective as a father for some fucking reason. When Detective Du-seok arrives, a confused Jae-hoo confronts him about this, but he grabs the letter and tears it to pieces, and a furious Du-seok yells and wonders, why did that monster call him father? And why did he have to be the target of his obsession? The scene shifts to prison, where we see Kim Shin looking at some photos of Detective Du-seok that his boss gave him as a monthly payment in exchange for his services, and he seems to be glad that the detective is alone and has no one with him. I mean, talk about the level of twisted pervertness. We see Detective Du-seok explaining Jae-hoo about the first time he met Kim Shin and his mother, and recalls a rather unpleasant memory. It was when he was on patrol duty with his colleagues, a task that he found boring, because there was not much to do except wait while they smoked in a square. A woman who looks retarded, and can be considered a beggar just from appearance alone, approached the officers from nowhere and claimed Du-seok to be her husband. The detective tells her that he will arrest her if she continues, but she pulls a boy who was Kim Shin himself and claims that the boy was their son. The detective gets mad at her for involving a child, but the woman insists on showing the proof of their love and shows a bag which, according to her, contains the evidence of everything she is saying. But it only contains garbage, which causes the surprise and disgust of the detectives. The old woman continues to insist until Kim Shin pulls her and tells her that they should go now in a disrespecting tone. Then his mother and the boy leave, but the detective has a bitter taste in his mouth and decides to stop them to give them some money, with which they could buy something to eat. And he also advises Kim Shin to treat his mother well and not insult her. Kim Shin says he understands. At the same time, he calls him father, much to the detective's irritation. At that time, the detective thought that they were just a crazy couple of mother and son. However, 5 years later, Kim Shin started his murders, and Jae-hoo's father was his first victim. The detective explains that Kim Shin has a twisted yearning for families, that he cannot bear to see happy families, as they arouse in him a murderous impulse. Remembering his father in light of this whole affair, Jae-hoo's will and conviction grow stronger to kill the despicable murderer responsible for the death of his beloved father and many other countless pitiful victims, and requests detective to make him stronger, to which the detective agrees, but reminds him that from now on, he will no longer be a human, but an arrow. Jae-hoo continues to evade his friends with very tricky excuses that little by little arouse their suspicion. When they see him every day fucked up and bruised, we see how the detective forces Jae-hoo to go through confrontations against multiple opponents, in which he must endure, while they beat the living shit out of him, and to increase the intensity, the old man strangles him even when he tries to eat, and he receives impacts from all kinds of blunt objects. Eventually, after 4 hard months, the fruits of the training began to ripen, and Jae-hoo began to destroy small gangs and thugs who bully and threaten people, and his physical ability has increased enormously, as his combat prowess has become astonishing. After 4 years, to complete his training, the detective assigns him to kill a guy who is actually a murderer, so Jae-hoo appears at his house in front of him, giving him a beating with totally murderous intent, seeming to enjoy punishing, but he stops at the last moment, after seeing something that captures his attention, sparing his life and leaving the apartment, after which Detective Du-seok reprimands him, slaps him for his insubordination. After listening to Jae-hoo's reason, the totally furious detective asks him if he would let Kim Shin go if he held a kid hostage. Jae-hoo replies that he agreed to kill Kim Shin, but never agreed to become a monster, and that he could never become someone like the murderer. The detective says that if so, there would be no chance in hell that he could ever kill Kim Shin. The key was to become just like him. Jae-hoo does not question this, and simply tells him to look for another arrow. Leaving the scene, the detective, furious with Jae-hoo, reproaches him that he never really wanted to kill Kim Shin, and just wanted to play the hero. But his face changes completely when Jae-hoo reveals that the child under the bed was practically the same age as his late son. The scene shifts to Kim Shin celebrating a birthday with a cake. In this specific case, the birthday of Detective Du-seok's son, who, if he had been alive, would have been 15 years old that day. The scar-faced guy arrives and insults him for always doing strangely elaborate things, and then gives his envelope of the month with the photos of the detective, to which Kim Shin demonstrates happiness comparable to that of a child with a new toy. By the way, for those who didn't notice, Kim Shin has 6 fingers, which is not a drawing error, but are mentioned several times. The scene changes to an Asian public bathroom where Du-seok and Jae-hoo bathing. Those present are surprised to see 2 very sucky guys bathing, while the detective washes Jae-hoo's back. He says that since it is difficult for a human to kill a monster, he does not plan to change that belief of his, as he will do anything to kill Kim Shin. Jae-hoo says that he feels the same, but he asks the detective what he thinks his son would think if he turned into a monster, and without hesitation the detective answers that his son would not be happy with it, since he was a good kid. Jae-hoo says that his father would feel the same, and they both remember their loved ones. Meanwhile, Kim Shin is madly enraged when he sees that someone else accompanied the detective, a person whom he does not recognize. Kim Shin wished that Detective Du-seok would always be alone and miserable. Suddenly, scene shifts to the prison warden's office. We witness how the boss Kim Shin is controlling the prison by taking the family of the warden as hostages, which makes the warden follow all his orders. It turns out that this guy Dongman belongs to an organized crime syndicate, extremely common in Korean stories. The leader of this association, called Utopia, Oh Jin-guk, had died 2 years ago without any appointed successor. A bloody war broke out, which was the reason Dongman was sent to prison, and his rival Kang Jang-gyu became the successor, causing the group to split between the two candidates for the position of leader, without speaking much of politics. In short, these bastards were after each other's necks. Jang-gyu periodically sent guys to infiltrate the jail and kill him, but Dongman threatened the warden of the place with the safety of his family, ensuring his own. Kim Shin suddenly enters while dragging another guy's head, knocking down the door. So that's it for today. If you liked the video, hit the like button, and make sure to comment below your thoughts for the next part. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.